So we're looking at the thyroid hormone axis. It's a bit of a tongue twister. Thyroid hormone axis. Okay. Let's start out by drawing the hypothalamus, anterior pituitary, posterior pituitary of the pituitary gland here. And then this is the hypothalamus. And I'm just drawing the posterior pituitary here for just reference, but remember that the hormones that we're speaking about are really, the axis itself is really through the anterior pituitary. We've also got the gland itself, so let's draw the thyroid gland here. And then I'll draw over here, we've got the actual target cells. So we'll just draw the liver as one example, liver, kidneys, those are some of the target cells that we're speaking about. Okay, so target cells. All right, so let's start by talking about the initial trophic hormone that's released from the hypothalamus. That is TRH. Let's draw this in another color. So TRH is released from the hypothalamus. This is thyrotropin releasing hormone that stimulates TSH production from the anterior pituitary, which is thyroid stimulating hormone. And then thyroid stimulating hormone is going to have an effect on the follicular cells of the follicles of the thyroid gland to secrete T3, T4. So also a stimulatory effect here, okay? And then this produces T3 and T4, okay? Now, a couple of things here with T3, T4. T4, we said, is more involved in the negative feedback loop, okay? It can also be converted to T3 peripherally, so let's just make a note here. So it can be converted to T3 in peripheral tissues. And then we also want to say that it's more involved in the negative feedback loop. Oops. Okay. T3, on the other hand, is more important in the target cell response. And I kind of messed up my drawing here, but let's just draw T3 going out to these target tissues and having a much more, I'll put 2 plus signs here, much more involved in the target cell response. Okay, let's talk about the negative feedback loops here now. So we said T4 is more involved in the negative feedback loop. So that's going to be the hormone that sends a signal back to either the anterior pituitary or the hypothalamus to decrease its hormone production. Oops. So we've got T4 going up to the anterior pituitary and having a negative effect here. This is a short loop negative feedback. And then we can draw another arrow that shows its effect. And I apologize for my unsteady hand here. Another arrow that shows its effect on the hypothalamus itself. Also a negative feedback here, but this one is a long loop negative feedback. Okay. All right. So let's just kind of explain this here again and see what questions you may have. So we've got the hypothalamus, the master gland. It secretes thyrotropin releasing hormone, which is going to signal the anterior pituitary to secrete thyroid stimulating hormone. And then that is going to facilitate the production of T3, T4. We talked about the binding of the receptor, the whole mechanism of how that's done. T3, T4 enters the bloodstream. T4 is going to have an effect on the negative feedback loop. So T4 is going to go back and tell the anterior pituitary in a short loop or the hypothalamus in a long loop to decrease their productions as a way of regulating this hormone axis. And then T3, did I say T4? I hope I said T4. So T4 is the one that's involved in the negative feedback. Then T3 is going to be more involved in the actual target cell response. So bringing about all those cellular events that we talked about, increase in the rate of sodium potassium pump, increase in those oxidative phosphorylation enzymes, increasing size and number of mitochondria, etc. Okay, and then we also want to point out T4 can be converted to T3 peripherally. So if we need to convert some of that T4 to T3 so that we can increase the cellular response portion of this axis, we can convert T4 to T3 where it's more bioavailable to bind to our target cells. Okay. I'll pause here and see if you have any questions on this. So this is the thyroid hormone axis. And as I mentioned before, we can kind of plug the other hormones here as well. So we can plug CRH here, ACTH here, and then the adrenal gland here. Cortisol has the same short loop negative feedback, long loop negative feedback as what we see here with the thyroid hormone. Okay. All right, let's keep rolling here. Okay, now let's speak about parathyroid hormone. So I mentioned a little bit earlier when we spoke about the anatomy of the thyroid gland that if we look at the back of the thyroid gland, we've got these 4 smaller glands embedded into the posterior surface. These are the parathyroid glands. These secrete parathyroid hormone, and parathyroid hormone has an antagonistic effect to calcitonin. So remember us talking about calcitonin secreted by some other cells in the thyroid gland that is responsible for decreasing calcium levels. Well, parathyroid hormone is going to have the opposite effect. It's going to regulate by increasing calcium levels when they're too low. And that is done by taking calcium from the bone and mobilizing it into the blood. Okay. So that is parathyroid hormone and the parathyroid glands. Now, interestingly here enough, parathyroid glands are important. They're compatible with life. They're one of the glands that we cannot remove from the body. So even if we have a thyroid removal surgery because of a malignancy or a goiter, we have to put back somewhere in the body. It doesn't always have to be in it doesn't always have to be in the trachea or in the neck region. We can put, some people have the parathyroid glands embedded under the skin, somewhere in the body because we need to have this. It's compatible with life. Really important gland, really important function.